Inspecting irrigation water systems is something that growers often do naturally without much thought to record keeping. Irrigation systems need to be constantly inspected and fixed to be kept in working order. From a food safety perspective, a number of key factors need to be considered. When evaluating the system, it's important to remember that a water system begins with the water source and extends all the way to the last emitter. Many GAP audits require the grower to keep a map of the water system. Though not required by the Food Safety Modernization Act Produce Safety Rule, it can be very helpful in an inspection. On a water system map, key components to be labeled might include water sources, including wells, ponds, and streams, potential sources of contamination, like mixing or loading pads or fuel storage, pressure sensors, and locations where hydrants connect to and terminate on the distribution system. Annual water system inspections should assess a number of key components. First, any inspection should guarantee the integrity of the delivery system. These are usually obvious from pressure sensor monitoring. If pressure sensors show an unexpected pressure drop in the system, a grower's natural response is to go looking for the leak. Regular checks to ensure the function of the pressure sensors may help avoid going on wild goose chases looking for leaks that don't exist. Apart from checking if pressure sensors are in working order, it is important to ensure check valves are functioning properly. This is only possible in those instances where a check valve is accessible. If the system a grower uses does not have an accessible check valve, one should be installed when making equipment upgrades. Another area of concern is the water intake area for surface water. In general, it must be kept free of debris, trash, domesticated animals, and other possible sources of contamination of covered produce to the extent practicable and appropriate under the circumstances. Checking for trash around the intake or anything the intake may have sucked to itself is essential to both meeting GAP requirements and the FSMA Produce Safety Rule. If one of the sources of water is a well, it should be inspected as part of this annual inspection as well. Look to ensure the wellhead is locked and the conduit pipe for the electrical is present and secure enough to prevent access of insects and other animals to the well. The same goes for the vent hole. It should be screened to prevent access. If a concrete pad exists, ensure that it isn't cracked, as this may be a sign that liquid is infiltrating the bentonite seal below it and swelling, placing pressure on the concrete. Though not as in-depth as inspecting to ensure GAP's compliance, a FSMA Produce Safety Rule inspection requires several key components as outlined in 112.42a. At the beginning of a growing season, as appropriate but at least once annually, you must inspect all of your agricultural water systems to the extent they are under your control, including water sources, water distribution systems, facilities, and equipment, to identify conditions that are reasonably likely to introduce known or reasonably foreseeable hazards into or onto covered produce or food contact surfaces in light of your covered produce, practices, and conditions, including consideration of the following: the nature of each agricultural water source, for example, groundwater or surface water, the extent of your control over each agricultural water source, the degree of protection of each agricultural water source, use of adjacent and nearby land, and the likelihood of introduction of known or reasonably foreseeable hazards to agricultural water by another user of agricultural water before the water reaches your covered farm. The considerations required under FSMA Produce Safety Rule are qualitative in nature. For example, is the water source very controlled by you, somewhat controlled by you, or poorly controlled by you? It requires the grower to make judgments to define the water sources. The other thing that a grower will see after following the criteria in 112.42a for a few years is the results likely will change very little if the water meets the water quality profile. These items serve to double-check everything that used to be true about the water system when the inspection was last conducted. It confirms that these things continue to be true and draws your attention to changes that could impact the quality of the water source. Regular annual inspections are not only a smart business practice, but they help build a robust food safety culture, and that is what the Produce Safety Rule is all about.